So the biggest trivia point that we're dealing with September 8th, 2025 is about the first episode of Star Trek that was broadcast. Ironically, this was broadcast in Canada 2 days before the States. Now, the Man Trap was the first episode, which is a great episode like the Salt Bouncer. But the Canadian network CTV, who purchased the show from bidding from CBC was looking to get it, aired episodes of the first season of Star Trek on Tuesday nights instead of Thursdays, and so ran The Man Trap on September 6, 66, 2 days before NBC. Airing American programs early was a common practice among Canadian broadcasters in order to avoid direct competition for viewers and advertisers, with American border stations airing the same program at the same time. The practice became obsolete when simultaneous substitution of commercials were permitted, but in certain cases it still occurs. Now, The Man Trap basically can be described as a horror story come to life, where basically you're having a shapeshifter from a nearly abandoned planet that's killing off members of the crew and other people for their salt to stay alive. This was the first episode of Star Trek, and in this episode, the crew visits an outpost to conduct normal medical exams on the residents, only be attacked by a shape-shifting alien creature seeking to extradite salt from their bodies. The Man Trap was written by the great George Clayton Johnson, contemporary Rod Serling, and directed by Mark Daniels. The story, part of the original Star Trek pitch by series creator Gene Roddenberry, was first assigned to Lee Irwin. Johnson took on the writing duties after Roddenberry disliked his work on another plot proposal. Johnson's first draft was entitled Damsel with a Dulcimer, incorporating elements from his Twilight Zone episode The Four of Us Are Dying. Roddenberry, producer Robert H. Justman, and story editor John D.F. Black all tweaked elements of the episode, including the title The Man Trap, and this was the sixth episode to be filmed, but the first to be shot to schedule. Prop creator Hua Chang and costume designer William Ware Thies created the creature. The episode was chosen as the first of the series to be broadcast in the studio due to the horror-based plot. The Man Trap plays first in its time slot with a Nielsen rating of 25.2 for the first half hour and 24.2 for the remainder. After broadcast, reviewers criticized the levels of violence but praised the acting. More recent appraisals have been mixed. Praise has been given to the plot and diverse cast, but Hollywood.com listed it as among the worst episodes of the series. Well, Hollywood.com don't know what the fuck they're talking about. There's a lot going on here because the creature is changing to match the person. When it tries to take over Uhura, it speaks Swahili. How in the hell is a salt bouncer going to speak Swahili? But it was like almost a mutant. The creature has been dubbed a salt vampire by fans. It was redesigned for possible inclusion in the 2009 film Star Trek, but was never used. Now, the cast is led by the great Jean Ball as Nancy Crater, Alpha Ryder plays Professor Robert Crater, and Michael Zaslow plays Darnell, the future soap opera actor. Now, in this one, the USS Enterprise arrives at planet M113 to provide supplies and medical exams for the only known inhabitants of the planet, Professor Crater and his wife Nancy, who operate an archaeological research station there. Captain Kirk, Chief Medical Officer McCoy, and crewman Darnell, again Zaslow, transport to the surface as Kirk teases McCoy about his affection for Nancy 10 years earlier. Plum. They arrive in the research station, and each of the three men sees Nancy differently. McCoy as she was when she first met her, Kirk as she should look accounting for her age, and Darnell is an attractive blonde woman who we met on the Pleasure Planet. When Nancy goes out to fetch her husband, she beckons Darnell to follow her. Professor Crater is then reluctant to be examined, telling Kirk that he only requires salt. Before McCoy can complete the examination, they hear a scream from outside. They find Darnell dead with red ring-like molting on his face, a plant root in his mouth, and Nancy standing over and saying she was unable to stop Darnell from tasting the plant. On board the Enterprise, Spock analyzes the plant. He confirms that it is poisonous, but that mottling is not a symptom. McCoy conducts a medical exam and, together with Spock, determines that all the salt was drained from Darnell's body. In response, Kirk transports back down the planet with McCoy and two crewmen, Green and Sturgeon. Kirk tells Professor Crater that he and his wife should stay aboard the Enterprise until they find out what killed Darnell. Crater then runs off trying to find Nancy. Nancy killed both Sturgeon and Green. Their faces show the same mottling as Darnell. Nancy then assumes the form of Green and meets with Kirk and McCoy. They beam back up to the ship with Sturgeon's body. When Green roams the corridors, he's stalking several crew members, killing one. He meets up with Uhura, and like I said, that's a very weird scene, very well done. It takes the form at one point of McCoy after confirming that the real McCoy has taken a sedative sleep. Meanwhile, Spock confirms that scans show only one person, the Crater on the planet. Kirk and Spock beam down to capture him. They find Green's body before Crater tries to frighten him away with phaser fire. After they stun him with phaser beam, the dazed Carter reveals that the real Nancy was killed by the creature, the last member of a long-dead civilization of shapeshifters who feed on salt a year earlier, just like the buffalo. The creature continued to take on the appearance of Nancy out of affection for Crater, and he has been feeding it, comparing it to now the extinct buffalo. Carrick informs the Enterprise of the creature's intrusion as the landing party and Crater transport back to the ship. Now, Crater refused to help them identify the creature, although he can recognize it in shape-shifting form. So Kirk orders a fake McCoy to administer truth serum. Kirk arrives in sickbay to find Crater dead and Spock injured. Spock's Vulcan blood made him incompatible with the creature's needs. So this is the biggest plot twist. If Crater was feeding her the salt and keeping her alive, why is she overeating? Now, back in its Nancy form, the creature goes to McCoy's quarters. Kirk arrives with salt tablets to lure the creature and to phase her if he provokes the creature into attacking. McCoy hesitates, giving the creature the opportunity to feed on the salt tablets and boosting his energy. It then attacks Kirk, using kind of a Vulcan move. Spock arrives and goes hand-to-hand against the creature, who retaliates, slapping against a wall. The creature reverts his natural appearance and starts to feed on Kirk and McCoy, as McCoy, stunned, stares in disbelief. Once Kirk screams, McCoy opens fire with his phaser. The creature changes back in the shape of Nancy to plead for its life. McCoy asks for forgiveness. They fire again and killing it. As the Enterprise leaves orbit, Kirk comments to Spock that he was thinking about the buffalo. Now, this is a top 10 episode of Star Trek, and for what it is, it's probably one of the most interesting plots in Star Trek history, because the shapeshifter is showing himself differently to, I think, close to 10 or 11 different people. And Zaslow, seeing his early performance too, is quite interesting. I give this 7 stars out of 10. The only negativity I have with it is the fact is that there is plot problems. But like I said, it did very good on the Nielsen's. And when it premiered in the UK, it was after Where No Man Has Gone Before, which was the second pilot. And again, The Man Trap was shown, October 4th as the 13th episode. I think it was trying to pass the censors. Now, again, the initial Hollywood Reporter said the episode was a winner with a lot of suspense and science fiction gadgets. Now, but George Clayton Thompson said in the Star Trek interview book that reaction to The Man Trap in the initial episode of Star Trek in general was complete bewilderment because it was all over the place. Was it a kid show? What it was a horror show? We didn't know. Now, the first adaptation of Man Trap was a reworking into a short story by author James Blish as part of the novelization Star Trek. The book contains 7 short stories, each based on an episode of the original series, published in January 1967. Now, again, the first home media release of Man Trap was a compact cassette from Startone Productions in 1982, like the audiobook. Further release on Laserdisc took place in 1985, alongside Charlie X. Further releases of all episodes of the series were made on VHS and Betamax. Now, I think for most fans of the show, this is one of their favorite episodes because there's a lot going on here. And you can never edit this episode of syndication. What's the original 50-minute episode, especially scenes with Uhura coming on to Spock, and like she's lonely, and I don't know how the Salt Vampire does that. Like, it's like almost like a mutant. So she's thinking of this beautiful black man who speaks Swahili, and the Salt Monster creates that. It's pretty freaky. So, ladies and gentlemen, The Man Trap, it's amazing how this episode stands out, because on when it showed on CTV, the CBC executive said, firstly, we made a big mistake. How much money did CBC lose by not outbidding CTV? Maybe because CBC was showing more traditional stuff on, earlier in the week. So, ladies and gentlemen, The Man Trap, again, one of the greatest episodes ever of Star Trek, and happy birthday. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you like what we're doing here with our Star Trek podcast as part of Screenshots, let us know in the like, comment, subscribe, or share.